Hey guys, my name is xOctoManx and this is part 15 of my turn-based battle system tutorial series. In this part we are going to start to perform all the GUI input panels and make them automatically filled with buttons depending on the skills and the attacks and everything else the heroes are able to perform. When we have done that, we are able to do actual damage to the enemies. So let's get started with that. At first I want to make sure that I create some new panels, or basically I rearrange something. The first one I want to get rid of is the attack panel. The attack panel is, when I just go over it, is this one. At first I want to make sure that I rename this or basically just recreate this. But before I go over and do that, I just take the attack button from the attack panel and drag this one into the Prefabs folder GUI. If you, I have one in here, so let me delete this one. So what I do is I take that attack button and drag that into the GUI Prefabs folder, and I want to make sure that I rename this one to action button. I'm going to explain that in just a second. So press F2 if you want to rename that, and just call this one action button. The next thing I want to make sure is that I get rid of the complete attack panel. Just delete that. As I have, since I have the select target panel already set up with a spacer game object to implement all the buttons for the enemies, I want to achieve the same with any action button. An action button in my case is going to be attack, magic, skill, and item. I don't go over item and skill because it will be automatically, or you should know what you have to do with them when you have the tutorial series completed. So what I go over is I want to make sure that I duplicate the select target panel by Control D and start to rename this one to be action panel. What I want to make sure is that this one also have a spacer game object already set up, as this one already have. It already has set up the vertical layout group, so we can later on place all the buttons inside. And what I want to make sure is that I duplicate that button or that panel once again. And this one is going to be my magics panel. Magics are going to be a fire spell and a lot of other spells we'll go over later on and create them if you don't have them already, as I expect. So we have another magics panel with another spacer in here. What you can do is you can basically rename all those spacer objects like target spacer, so you later on also know that you have the right one, the action spacer, and this one can be the magic spacer. You don't need to, but you can. It's just better to know what you're doing and you know what to have. So the next thing is I have that action button in here, but if I would go over and drag this one into the spacer game object of this action panel, for example, you would see that we have a distortion, or basically something we don't want to. We want to see all the elements, which is basically that text over here, and make them visible once we create those buttons. So the first and foremost thing we go over is we go into the action button prefab and we add two more components. The first one is going to be a layout element. So with this one we are able to override the vertical and the horizontal elements and everything else too. And we say just flexible width is going to be 0 and flexible height is going to be 0. It will still look like that. Maybe we don't need this one, but I want to make sure that it is 100% working. And of course I also want, let me reduce this once again, another component which is a horizontal layout group. This horizontal layout group will, depending on what we want of that group, will act depending on the text element in itself. That means if the text maximum size, which is currently 40 in my case, is smaller or higher, it will automatically fit the horizontal and I believe the vertical stuff in here too. So if I say it's going to be 20 at maximum size, it will automatically fit the text into the button, and the button will automatically fit the size of the text, basically. We can also use padding or some kind of spacing in between the top and the bottom, so we would have some space. Same can be applied from the left to the right and right to the left. So now I want to make sure that I get the right, or the right maximum size. What I do is I duplicate my action button 3 times in the action spacer. 1, 2, 3. You can see the vertical layout group works perfectly. But the text is not the right size. I want to make sure that all those 4 buttons, since I know that there will be only 4 buttons in that action panel, I want to make sure that everything fits well. So I select all the text elements of all 4 buttons and go to maximum size and change it until it fits. Let's start with 30 maximum size. As you can see, it will fit automatically. But if I would go over and delete one button, it will be higher than that. So I undo that one, and until so I go to maybe 27. So now you can see there's a small gap over here. So I believe 28 should be my right size, and there we go. So what I do right now is I delete the last 3 I duplicated, and the last one, or the first one, I just go over and press the apply button. So all actions or everything I just changed, like adding the layout element, the horizontal group, and changing the text size, will be applied to the prefab we just created. And as you can see, it will be automatically overridden. Okay, that's it for that action button. Let's get rid of that one. And now we can use this in any kind and any stuff we want. So let's go into our Bell state machine. And for our Bell state machine, we need to create some more variables for our magic attacks and basically for all the new panels we just created. The first one, as you can see, this one is already here, the attack panel. We can also again rename this one in here to be action panel. Let's see, we don't have much of them, but I just leave them alone as they are. I hope you can see this. I'm gonna zoom in a bit. Hopefully it's not too small. Oh, maybe this should fix. Okay, so what I do is at first I want to create a new public game object, and this is going to be my magics panel. This is the third one actually we are using, or we need to use. Magic panel. And I want to create some variables for our magic attacks. So what we need is we need a lot of spacer game objects, as we already have done in here, which in this case is the spacer for the enemy select panel. I want to create 2 more for the attack panel and for the magic panel at first. So we say public transform, and this is going to be attacks. Let me just call this one action spacer. So it will, don't rename that like this. Okay, so I don't confuse myself. The next one is another transform. You can also go over and copy and paste that. Well, transform. That can't happen. Can't type today. Okay, this is of type transform, and this is going to be our magic spacer. Okay, the next one is we need the button, the action button, public game object, and it's going to be the action button. And of course we need something else. It's going to be a list. This list is going to be going to store all the buttons we will create in the future, and this list is the only way currently to be able to deactivate or delete disabled game objects. So I use this to just trick the system basically, because when we have disabled game object, we are unable to find them. So I store them in the list later on, and then we'll make sure that this list is going to be updated when we need to delete the buttons, so we don't have anything more over. So we say it's going to be a new list of type game object, and that's it. So it's attack buttons, something short, basically ATK for attack and BTNS for buttons. Okay, so let's scroll down. We are going to create a new function in here, and this function is going to be for the attack buttons itself. So we go over and create the first action button, which is called attack void attack buttons. We can also say create attack buttons. So we know what this is going to be, like this. So create attack buttons, it's going to be a new function, and in this function we are going to do stuff, of course, or actually creating the attack buttons. So the first one is game object attack button is going to equal to instantiate, and now what do we want to instantiate? It's going to be our action button. There it is. And as what do we want to instantiate this one? As a game object. Otherwise we would just have an object instantiated instead of a game object. Okay, so the next one is we want to change the text component, or basically the text inside of the button, or like this. So we say we create a new catch object with of type text. We call this one attack button text. And what is it going to be? It's going to be attack button dot get component. Oh no, it's not get component yet. It's going to be transform dot find child. We want to find the child object inside of the attack button itself. The text element, basically, or the text object, is called text in my case. Gonna show you this one. If you are on the action button itself, there is it one which is called text. If you have renamed this to whatever, I don't know, to attack text or attack button text, or I don't know, then make sure that you use that string in your battle state machine over here. Okay, so if you haven't done that, don't worry, it should work. So we say after this one dot game object dot get component. Now we go over and get the text component on the text object, basically. So it's of type text and the line. So now we have the possibility to change the text just by using that variable, and that's what we are going to do in the next step. So just go and double click that part of text, copy this, paste over here, and what I can say is attack button dot text. So we can paste or place in a string variable directly into the text component, and what we can do is at this point we just call this one attack. There we go. So the next button which we are basically instantiating when whoever is instantiating an attack button, it's going to be automatically named attack. So the next part is we want to add a on-click event directly into that instantiated button. So we say attack button dot get component. And which component do we need? Of course, we need the button component on that game object. There we go. And what we want to do is we want to enable, or basically plug in or paste or post in any function basically into the on-click event. So we say dot on-click dot add listener. So we add a listener or a listener to the on-click event, which is already on the button itself. So what we do is we open some brackets, or open and close some brackets, then another pair of open and close brackets, and after this one we can use an equal and then a bigger sign. This means we are creating some kind of callback or action. Also, it's going to be here, or you can you can read all the infos about all of that stuff in here. And what do we want to add to that onClicked event? It's basically a function we already have. And this function is going to be called input1, which is a tag button we just created already. So when we click that button, which is then created, we can perform everything which stands in input1 just by adding this one to the listener. So what we say is input1 as a function, and then we are done. At last, of course, we close the line. So what we do is we paste in or place in the onClick or the listener with using input1. So the function input1. So again, when we click that button, it will automatically perform everything what is in input1. Okay, so the next one is we want to set this button into the right spacer object. So we say attack button dot transform dot set parent, and who's the right parent? It's going to be the attack panel, I believe. Yes, comma false. We need to set this one to comma false because you might have an overflow of the button itself and the images or the panels or buttons will not fit the entire or fit the right spot basically. So all the local, as you also can see when you type this one in, it will keep the local scale and all the other things. And of course, what we want to do is we want to add that button we just created into the list we just created in the top. So we say attack buttons, so atkbtns dot add, and what do we want to add? It's going to be the attack button. There it is. We can end the line. So let's test this one out. Don't forget to save this. And of course, we need to call create attack buttons at a specific point. So I'm gonna go over and copy the name. And where are we needed to call this one? Basically then when the hero is able to perform an action. And this is over here. In the case hero GUI activate. So we are activating someone because we found him. He is active. He has already a new instance of her handle turn. We set the attack panel basically to be true. And after that, we want to make sure that we create the attack buttons at that point. You can also go over and make a note over here in 2. So don't forget to save Battle State Machine. Let's go back and see what it's going to, and of course if we have any errors. We cannot transform anything to whatever. Of course, it is not going to be the attack panel. It's needed to be the action spacer. My fault. I'm sorry. So it's going to be the action spacer, of course. We want to set this one into a spacer game object, which is already of type transform. Okay, so again, save this one. The errors should be gone in just a second. What we do is we go to our battle manager right now and we can fill in all information. The magic panel, the attack, the action spacer, the magic spacer, and the action button. So that's what we do next. We go to our action panel. There is an action spacer and we can just drag this action spacer into the transform of that. Same for the magic panel and the magic spacer. We can also drag this one inside of this. And then we have the magic panel itself, which is the top one over here. So make sure you have everything corrected. Since I already took care of the old attack panel, we need to make sure that we drag in the action panel we just renamed. If yours is still called attack panel, no worries. You still need to paste this one in. And the last one is going to be the prefab for the action button in here. So we go into our GUI folder and of the prefabs, of course, and drag in the action button prefab. Okay, so far so good. Let's test out what we have done. The first thing before we test this one out is I want to make sure that I disable the magic panel at start So the same as we have done for the attack panel and the enemy select panel. So go into your start function and then make sure that you set magic panel dot set active. Whoops, again some typos. Set active to be false. No, like this. Okay, don't forget to save once again. So at start everything, if it is not active or inactive or whatever, then if it is active, it will be automatically set to inactive. That's what I mean. Okay, so let's see if the bar of the hero is going to be filled. What will happen? As you can see, there will be automatically an attack button in here in our action spacer. As you can see, it's a clone of that with nothing special on it, but the input one already works. So when I click this one right now, it will automatically go into the next parts where we can actually again select enemy 1 or 2. When we have done the input, as you can see, it will create another attack one, and I can repeat that, and it will always, or the whole time, will go over and fill up or everything with a button into that spacer game object. Why is that happen? Because we do not delete them after we are selecting another hero or the next hero in the list. So it will always be at that spot. So what we want to do for this is we want to destroy the currently created buttons in the hero input done function. So when we're done with hero input, we want to make sure that we also, after we disable the enemy select panel, clean up the attack panel. How can we do that? Well, basically with a simple for each loop. So we say for each and brackets, and then what are we after is every game object, and I call this one ATKBTN without an S in ATKBTNS, which is our list. So for every game object we just call attack button. In our attack buttons list we just created, we want to make sure that we destroy that ATKBTN, so the attack button. So every attack button is going to be destroyed which is in that list. After we have done that, I want to make sure that I clear off the complete list just in case. So ATKBTNS.clear. And that's it. Gonna save this one. Let's go back to Unity and test this one out once again. Pressing play. And now we have the attack button. We can select any enemy again as we want. Gonna select this, and now we only have one attack button left because the list got cleared, and we are able to do that the whole time once again. Pretty cool and pretty simple, and the same can be applied to any amount of buttons we want. So I believe that are going to be the last steps today. Let's see if how far we come in the next 5 or 10 minutes. So what I can do is I can take the whole action button part and duplicate this and start to rename that. So what I can say is it's going to be magic attack button in this case. Double click that part and copy and paste in everywhere the same stuff where attack button is. So make sure you have everything. And for attack button text, we just say it's going to be magic button text. Double click, copy, and choose the magic button text at the second or third line in here. So of course, we also need to make sure that magic attack button is added to the list after it's done. Gonna save this one once again, return to Unity. And now we should be able, before we do that, we need to take care of the add listener line. We don't need this into that input field because we have to do different stuff in that. So I just go over and command this one out for this. Don't forget to save because we cannot use input 1 for this. Now again, I can go over and select this one. Wait until it's done, and we should have well, of course, we forgot to rename it. So this one will be, okay, will have the text magic instead of attack. So make sure you change this one too. Again, gonna save this one, go back to Unity. When it's done compiling, press play. And then we should have an attack and a magic button. As you can see, the magic button won't do anything, but the attack button will still work as it has done before. Same here for the second one. There's no way to enter any stuff with that magic button. Okay, that's it for that part. I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed what you have seen. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me around, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And of course, leave a thumb up if the video was helpful in any way. So, see you in the next part. Bye bye.